Hello and welcome back to the KCC channel. I'm Rob and I hope you are having a wonderful day today. Today we're jumping into some malicious compliance. Our first story today comes to us from Toll House Frank. Followed the dress code to the fullest extent. Let's jump right in. Howdy folks, this one took place closing in on 6 years ago. The bosses at the time were usually very cool and easy to get along with. However, some Karen got into HR and insisted on changing the work culture to suit her desires and vision. She rewrote the dress code and overnight, instead of being allowed to show up dressed comfortably, as long as it wasn't dirty, smelly, or full of holes, tech support center, we suddenly had to dress business professional. She even specified the materials the clothing could be made out of. She tried firing almost everyone there for violating dress code before a manager, one I still love to this day, told her to calm herself. Because she had not only not published the dress code, it hadn't been approved by management. HR Karen gets her memories in a knot and pulls strings to get it approved in a couple of days. So in a couple of days, I was reading through the dress code, trying to see what I could do to make her regret it. The dress code word for word: clothing is to be made of woolen materials only, unless a specific exception is made below. Allowable clothing is listed as business suits, button-up dress shirts, monocolor ties, leather shoes, skirts, and blouses. If wearing a skirt or blouse, silk materials are accepted. Of note, the silk exception was put in solely for her, as she claimed that wool gave her hives. Anyway, the air conditioning had been out for weeks, and we had been getting by in the building with big fans and wearing light shorts and shirts. It was a hot summer. So I searched for a loophole in the new dress code. I'm sure you can already see what loophole I found and exploited. Note, despite having lost a lot of weight since then, I am still a hefty, very hairy man. 200 plus pounds lost since then, with a very long beard. So day one of the new dress code, on the way to work, I stopped in at a local Goodwill. I bought the most garish skirt I could find that I could squeeze in, and the most feminine blouse I could find. I paid for them and got dressed at a gas station just down the street from the work location. I waltzed into work with lots of stares coming my way. However, I was the only man on the floor not sitting in a pool of my own sweat. Skirts are surprisingly breezy, and blouses are like nothing there at all. Less than 30 minutes in, everyone in the building can hear HR Karen screaming at and about me as she runs up to my desk and demands I go to her office for disciplinary action. I tell her I cannot do that, as company policy states that disciplinary action can only be undertaken by the employee's team lead and site manager, not HR. She then screams at both of them to force me into her office. They both give me the stink eye, but I give them a thumbs up and a big grin and say, please, 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 make me go into her air-conditioned office. Did I also mention she had the only working air conditioner on site? So the four of us trudged to her office with me grinning ear to ear, myself and many coworkers laughing as this large, hairy, heavily bearded man in a silk skirt and blouse walks past everyone. All because I and they know how ridiculous I look, and how they know I only pulled stunts at work like this when I am 100% in the right. So we get to HR Karen's office and I sit down. She tells me I am going to be fired for insubordination and breaking dress code. I laugh in her face and tell her terminations can only be processed upon agreement by the team lead of the employee, site management, and HR. You are the one who insisted upon and wrote that rule. Unless they both agree, you are lying and can shut up. She was screaming at the top of her lungs at this point. She said it was harassment against all the women in the office for a fat, hairy man to be in women's clothing. Oh, can you point out the dress code where only women are allowed to wear skirts and blouses? As soon as I said that, my team lead suddenly lit up and started giggling as she knew where I was taking this. Karen got out a written copy of the dress code and then started sputtering and stammering as she read it word for word as I typed it up above. Gender was not mentioned, only material and types of clothing allowed. As she started screaming at me again for being inappropriate, The site manager looked at her and said, "Do you really want to get fired for sexual discrimination and sexual harassment? He has you caught in a ringer over a barrel of fire, and it would cost us potentially millions." Strangely enough, the dress code was rescinded before the end of the day, and we were allowed to go back to the way we had been dressing. As an extra, she is no longer with the company and has been gone for years. She made blunder after blunder, usually screaming at me and my bosses, but I always pointed her at the policies she made and got approved, as I was following them to the letter. I'm actually really amazed that she was able to get that dress code approved by the higher-ups after trying to make the change with absolutely no approvals previously. Kinda makes you wonder if the HR person had something over one of the managers. You never know. Do me a quick favor and take a look down below the video. If that subscribe button's still red, it means you're actually not subscribed to the KCC channel. Please hit that subscribe button for more daily Reddit stories. This next story comes to us from I Am a Simp for Obi-Wan. The city wanted me to take better care of my gardens, so I had them approved by the local Nature Conservation Association. Let's jump right in. The guys at Pro Revenge argued that it better belongs here, so here I am. My house is surrounded by two gardens, one in the front, facing the street, and one in the back, bordering my neighbor's gardens. When my parents and grandparents moved into our house 26 years ago, they planted a thick hedge around the entire property. They also installed a rose arch over the pathway to our front door, and my grandfather was always busy keeping up the garden, planting, weeding, keeping everything very tidy. My grandfather died in 2002, and after that, the garden was neglected for a few years as my parents were still working and my brother and I were in university and school. But then, around 2005, my mom read something that we should plant stuff to help the bees, and she took over the gardens, planting lilac, rhododendron, roses, and various berries. Later, we decided to also install raised garden beds with various kitchen herbs. My mom is now over 70 years old and has officially given the house over to my brother and me, so that we won't be taxed on inheriting it when she dies. Since then, I've been sporadically taking care of the gardens. I like them in their wild shape with all the birds, bees, bumblebees, and butterflies flying around. In autumn we get hedgehogs, and we've been visited by a fox recently, which sends my cats into a panic. Then, recently, we received a letter from the city stating that our garden was interfering with the safety of the street, because the hedge was overgrowing the pavement and contained poisonous berries which were a danger to children. Now, my brother trims the hedge every month to make sure nothing is overgrowing the pavement in any way. And while the berries are poisonous, to get to them, you'd have to be quite resilient because they're surrounded by thorns. They are also known to be ideal food for some local birds. So I contacted our local Nature Conservation Association and asked them if they would like to have a look at our gardens and maybe tell us if we could improve anything to make them even more nature friendly. They came, looked around, and then told us they rarely see gardens so in touch with nature. They approved our gardens as especially nature friendly and contacted the city to tell them that from their point of view, any changes would be considered unfriendly to nature. And since our city prides itself with once being one of the green capitals in our country, they had to budge. Don't mess with my gardens. See, OP, I completely agree with you for being at one with nature. I mean, that's what my house looks like. That's exactly why there's a whole bunch of weeds all over my yard. Right? What must have happened in this case, though, is that one of the neighbors probably called in and complained, because if you were actually keeping those hedges back from the public walkways, then the city really wouldn't have had a problem with it unless somebody else had a problem with it. The same thing happened on my street a couple of years ago in the winter. I forgot to park my truck in the driveway, and I woke up to a $110 ticket for leaving my truck on the street overnight. Now, there were other cars that were on the street overnight as well, and none of them had tickets. So somebody must have called that in. Honestly, sometimes we get neighbors that we just can't win with, and unfortunately, we have to do basically what they want. But two can play that game, because if you know what neighbor it is, any blatant violations that they have, you make sure you call them in too. This next story comes to us from Voyager 7. Whatever you'd usually wear. Let's jump right in. This happened a long time ago in a friend group of mine. Julia, 27 female at the time of the incident, was having a garden party. Julia was basically a good person, but stressed out over tiny details easily. And when she was throwing a party, she could sometimes get a little, well, whatever the equivalent of bridezilla is if it's not actually a wedding. In this case, she was driving all of us girls nuts with her vision for her party, which included each of us in a different color, coordinated pastel dress so that we'd make a collective rainbow, and similar antics. Enter Mickey, 24 male. Mickey was and still is Julia's best friend. He definitely had a streak of mischief to him, and he was also the only one who could usually make Julia see how ridiculous she was being when she got like this. We asked him to talk to her about it, but he didn't get anywhere this time. Julia just said tiredly, "Please let me have this. I've been working on it for months." Eventually, we ended up agreeing to wear what she wanted us to wear so long as she paid for the dresses, which to her credit, she did. Meantime though, Mickey asked her what he was supposed to wear. Now, Julia's vision didn't really include specific plans for how the guys were going to dress. She just wanted them in suits or the like. So when Mickey asked her that in the middle of a harried moment, she blurted, "I don't care, just wear whatever you'd normally wear to an outdoor party." Cue malicious compliance, or at least mischievous compliance, since I don't think there was serious malice involved. See, Mickey worked at a Ren fair. When he went to outdoor parties, which he did several times every summer, he attended as part of the staff, and he had a very specific costume he was supposed to wear. And so, on the day of the party, he shows up early along with most of the rest of us to help Julia set up, and he's wearing a full Ren Fair jester's costume, complete with cap and bells. To Julia's credit, her first reaction was to laugh her head off, her second was to swat him. Mickey did set up in the jester's outfit and then finally admitted, just before the party, that he had a different outfit in his bag if she'd like him to change. He hadn't intended to really mess up her party, only to break her brain a little before it started. Julia eventually did tell him it would be nice if he'd go change, but she had to think about it. She admitted she was starting to think it might be worth it just to see how everybody else reacted to this perfectly set up garden party with a pseudo-medieval jester wandering around. You know, if a lot of Julia's parties were like this, they might not have been all that enjoyable for a lot of people that went to them, and they might have just been going because, well, you're a friend, and if I don't show up, that's not a good thing. That jester routine probably would have brought a lot more fun into that party, and it probably would have been the talk of the town too. This next story comes to us from More Than From No Fall. Sure, I'll take your pennies. Let's jump right in. I was working at a gas station about 20 years ago. One evening, this lady comes in, dumps like 5 or 6 handfuls of pennies on the counter, and states her preferred brand. Ordinarily, our cashiers would just tell someone to F off if they were trying this, but I was pretty chill at the time, and I had nothing to do but run the register and stuff my face with food from the deli case. So, cue malicious compliance. I just said, "Okay, but I'll have to take other customers. I'll count this between." She objects. "It's all there. I counted it already." I reply, "If my drawer comes up wrong, I'll get in trouble. I have to count it. Sorry." She starts stomping around the store all mad, throwing her arms around, etc. I would later come to recognize this as tweaker behavior, and I start counting, meticulously setting the pennies aside in stacks of 10. And pausing every time a customer comes in. All the while, this lady is acting like she's been stabbed through the hand. Maybe half a dozen customers, and 10 minutes later, I'm nearing the end of the pile. She's still standing by the door, getting more and more impatient, being at everyone who comes through. I was giving the other customers priority, so they didn't care, of course. Anyway, I finished counting and she's short, maybe 15 cents, who could remember? It was fairly common for people to raid the penny dish to cover the cost of a pack of cigarettes they couldn't quite afford. And this was generally allowed. Small town, and after all, who even cares? But she promised me it was all there, and I got a bit of a bug up my butt about it. So I take the overflowing free penny dish and move it behind the counter before calling her over. "You're 15 cents short." Can't I just cover it from the dish? Where is it? What dish? There's a dish. There's always a dish. You took it away. I give her a puzzled look, wave my hands over the counter. There's no dish. I don't know what you're talking about. She is incensed and cusses me out for a while. I just shrugged it off. She left without her cigarettes, of course. My boss came over afterward and told me I didn't have to count those or even take them. Dude did not get mad at all, but I just played it straight and was like, oh, okay. Now, I've mentioned before that wifey and I used to run a convenience store, and cigarettes were the one thing that people would bring in all kinds of different things to pay for. We're talking silver mint sets, we're talking silver dollars, we're talking money from way back in the 60s. There were all kinds of things that came into the store. Now, that worked out for me though, because I was a coin and bill collector, and I collected a lot of things in that store from these people. I've never really understood this thing of bringing a bunch of coins in as a way to get back at somebody in a store, because any one of these stores is going to make you sit there while they count them all out. They're being paid by the hour to be there. You're not. So who's winning in that case? This next story comes to us from Novel Command 8445, a fiasco with pancakes. Let's jump right in. This happened at a restaurant a few years ago. We'll just call it Bracker Carroll, or BC for short. So on a busy Sunday afternoon, the church crowd was slowly winding down, and we were nearing our dinner rush. This particular restaurant, you can order breakfast all day. At around 3 p.m., two ladies were seated in my section, and I greeted them promptly. Both ordered drinks, their food as well, at the same time. Guest 1 ordered Mama's pancake breakfast with scrambled eggs and cheese with extra crispy bacon. Guest 2 ordered the Grandma's sampler with scrambled eggs and cheese with extra crispy sausage, bacon, and ham. I put their order in exactly as they ordered and told the cooks how they said they wanted to see no pink anywhere. Cooks made the food, I expedite and bring out their meal. Everything looks the way they ordered it: charcoal bacon, sausage, and ham. I set the food down and they immediately start running me. Never once did they ask for everything at the same time, even after I asked, "Is there anything else I can get for you?" Every time I brought back something like hot sauce, ketchup, or napkins, they always needed something else. After 5 minutes of back and forth, they said everything was fine and I went and did other duties. They hadn't touched their food until I had everything for them they had me run around for. A few minutes later, my manager on duty comes to me and asks about table 231, guest 1 and 2. He says they're complaining their eggs are cold and their food is burned. I explained they said everything looked fine and their eggs wouldn't have been cold if they had asked me for extra napkins, hot sauce, ketchup, and extra butter and jelly on one trip instead of 6. He goes back and forth with them, and they are adamant they are not paying for the eggs or bacon and are only paying for the pancakes. Cue malicious compliance. The Grandma's sampler comes with 2 pancakes, a sampler of meats, eggs, and a side of your choice for $9.99. 2 a la carte pancakes are $7.99, so $2 off for all of you math geniuses out there. Mama's pancake breakfast comes with 3 pancakes, eggs, and your choice of meats for $7.99. 3 a la carte pancakes are $9.99, which is obviously $2 more than the breakfast. Manager on duty hands the receipts to each lady and both stop him before he can walk away. Guest 2 is squawking she's paying $2 less than what her breakfast would have cost, and she felt that wasn't a good enough discount. Guest 1 is squawking because her meal is now more than what it was before. The only thing my boss kept saying to both of them was, "You asked to only pay for the pancakes, and that is what I charged you for," and then he walked away. They paid up front, squawking the entire time at the cash register, making a scene, threatened to call corporate, and said they will be returning to speak to someone higher than my manager on duty. Manager on duty and I went into the back and kept laughing. You don't get many wins in the service industry, but this one will always be a memorable one. I'm guessing these people were serial complainers and they were used to getting severe discounts on their breakfast and honestly whatever other meals they were getting, because they would complain about something every single time. OP, you did exactly what they asked in the first place, so they got exactly what they deserved. Check out all 5 OPs linked in the description down below. I thank you for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day, and we'll see you tomorrow.